Bandana? Check. Kinda unruly hair? Check. Sweet tea? Check. I'm ready to go watch The Blind. Come with me and we'll do a review afterwards. That's a fact, Jack. Okay, I actually don't wear bandanas, but I do like sweet tea. But I am here at the movie theater and am very excited to see this movie. I've been a fan of Duck Dynasty since, well, all of the first episodes came out. I expect good things, but you never know. Stories can be told differently from different people, so we'll see how it goes. But I gotta show you this really cool thing. This is my sunset right now as I'm walking in. Look at this sunset. That's pretty. Okay, here we go.
Here are these rare stories of how the impossible happened.
Well, I'm back home from the movie, and I know I'm actually supposed to be wearing this on my shirt like this, but I think it sounds better like this, and I feel like Bob Barker, I guess. And this was the most Duck Dynasty-esque like background I could find. It's really not, but it's something. Anyway, let's go ahead and get to the movie review, and I have my camera there, but like right next to it I have a little bit of a script because I'm no speaker like Sadie Robertson or Phil Robertson or Willie Robertson. I'm not a speaker, so I'm gonna read. So anyway, let's go ahead and get into this because I thought the movie was... Wait, I'm not gonna give you any spoilers, so don't worry about that. So I knew the story pretty well before going into it. Back in 2014, I read their books, Psychology, and then Happy, Happy, Happy. Psychology was, of course, by Psy, and Happy, Happy, Happy was about Phil. As I was starting into this movie, I tried to go into it blindly. Get it? Blindly? That was an unintentional pun that worked out very well. Anyway, so I tried to go into it blindly and like not know the knowledge that I knew from reading the book and kind of listening to their podcast beforehand and all that stuff. So I tried to go into it blindly. I thought the story was good. It told their story well, well produced, and the end was my favorite. So let's break it down into the good and the bad. The good. First thing I noticed was sound design. You guys are probably like, what? I want to hear about the story. But when you go into it, listen to it. Because your ears will never catch anything that's out of line. You're like, what was that noise? There was one part, the dogs were barking, and it was so real. It felt like I was back home on the farm because we have a dog named Ranger. Shout out to my dog, Ranger. And he barked like when strangers came by, and it was like the perfect sound. And there's a spot that has mud, and when you watch the movie, the sound design was so like vivid. It was almost too good with the mud, but a lot of it was just listen to it. Good point number 2 is the heart and meaning behind the story. I'm sure if you're planning on watching this, you're already a Duck Dynasty fan, and you probably have a rough understanding of the family. So this movie, going into it, The Blind, was going to be about Phil and Miss Kay and when they were young and how Duck Commander began. What's also in this movie was their faith story and how their family came to be one of the most popular TV shows that always had a prayer at the end of every episode. This movie, The Blind, was not afraid to talk about Jesus and show the moment when Phil turned from his difficult and damaging path to becoming the outspoken, godly family they are today. The movie gave a good spotlight on Miss Kay, and it showed off her strength. Phil is a strong man, and Kay saw that from the very beginning, and you can see that in their little love story. Miss Kay has her own strength, which greatly complements Phil's strength, and Kay's strength and willingness to keep their marriage together is what kept their family together. So there were a lot of goods, but it's a movie review, so we have to be a little critical. And there were a few things, sadly, that there was good reason to be critical. First, I think they showed Phil drinking a little too much. Like, yeah, it was a part of the story, but at the same time, it was like, how are you drinking that much? You can't even take breaths in between all of these drinks. So it was a little much. Like, I think maybe they spliced it together. Like, you gotta drink in this scene, you gotta drink in this scene, but then it's like he's always just drinking something. Subtle things, subtle things. One part that wasn't so subtle, that wasn't my favorite, no spoilers, but Miss Kay and the bathroom scene. When you watch the movie, you'll know what scene I'm talking about, but I felt like it was just like too suddenly out of character for Miss Kay. Maybe it really happened in real life, but it didn't really like flow. That's all I'll say without spoilers. This is a little spoiler, but it's like an expected spoiler. is that at the end they have a prayer around their dinner table, which they do the same in all of their TV shows. So it's pretty much expected, like that's just how it ends. But anyway, they had some music playing at the end of it, and then during the prayer, they didn't actually like completely drown out the music. So in the middle of his prayer, you're like, am I listening to the prayer or am I listening to the lyrics? So a little strong. That was the only sound design flaw that I really heard. As for the storyline itself, one spot that stuck out to me in the book, when I read the book, Happy, 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 that I wish they had incorporated in this was that I remember when Phil was first introduced to who Jesus was. He didn't just accept it like, okay, that's what I believe. Good. That's all I need to know. In my mind, like I said, I tried to erase it. But in my mind, I thought of the book. And in the book, it said that he was a man that, like, when he wanted to learn about a subject, he would just dive fully into it and learn everything he possibly could about it. And so when he was introduced to Jesus, he read like the entire Bible and was just like focused on it. And that's what he just like enveloped himself in. And I feel like that was a little part that was missing that could have been easily incorporated and gave more of a closure and conclusion to him turning from his old path to his new path. So I wish they showed a little bit more of like the actual Bible. Overall, I'd say the feel of it was a documentary, a little bit like a documentary, but not at the same time. It's like you mix a documentary, and a story together. I think the thing that made it feel less like a movie and more like a documentary was the cohesiveness. They came back to the blind, which was where the story was being told from, so much so that it felt like a documentary. Like they go back to the speaker, instead of just letting the story just flow. And of course, I am comparing this to another movie based on a true story from someone else famous who also isn't afraid to speak out about their faith, and that is Dolly Parton. So, a side bonus movie review, if you haven't seen her movie Coat of Many Colors, that is one I'd highly, highly, highly recommend seeing. Back to The Blind. There wasn't as much attention on the boys, Willie, Jace, and Al, as much as I thought there would be, but it actually was fine that way. The casting was really good too. They got their accents down pretty well, especially Miss K. I feel like the voice for Phil was a little bit mumbly at points, but I mean, I guess with that beard, you might have to be mumbly anyway. I don't know. I can't relate to that. Also, one point that I think they could have made a little more clear from the beginning was in The Blind, it was Phil and another guy, but they didn't really explain who the other guy was, like, just right off the bat, to where you felt like, oh, okay. I mean, you inferred. There was a fair amount of inferring things, which was fine. I mean, it's good that they don't just spill it all out to you. The second thing I would change is that I feel like they ended it too quick. It could have gone out a few more, like, years and developed just a touch on how his walk with God was directly a part of his business and how he tied them together. Okay, so we're to the conclusion. In conclusion, if you like Duck Dynasty, go see it. If you don't like Duck Dynasty, still go see it. They are an amazing family, and The Blind was definitely worth a watch. Go see it. It's good, and that's a fact, Jack.
That's what I always say, Jack.
I also do travel videos and a few other things. And so subscribe if you want to see more, and go watch The Blind. Bye, guys.